Old Grognard says, "Let's do an introduction to Gamma World." My first experience with Gamma World was the same as a lot of folks who played D&D back in the 80s or 90s. It wasn't playing Gamma World itself, but rather playing D&D, and the DM decided that it was a good idea to inject Gamma World into the mix to keep things interesting. This usually took the form of dimensional shenanigans that had the party fighting robots or mutant plants or something along those lines. This was possible because the two systems are fairly similar to the point that the AD&D First Edition's DMG has conversions where you can port things from one game into the other. Gamma World was first published by TSR back in 1978. Since then, it's been through 7 different editions. The version I'll be referencing will be the 4th edition, published in 1992. It's based heavily on AD&D 2nd edition, with some streamlining that ended up being a sort of playtest for some of the elements of 3rd edition D&D. To introduce 4th edition Gamma World, I figured I would just read the intro text that starts on page 4 of the rulebook. It does a decent job of telling you what the game is about and what to expect. Here's what it says. The game takes place several centuries after the war, and centuries from now, approximately AD 2200, although the exact date is unknown, the cataclysm rocked the Earth. For reasons long forgotten, nuclear bombs were dropped, insidious poisons released into the atmosphere, and viruses of living death unleashed upon humanity. The devastation was unimaginable. The forces of destruction forever altered the face of our green Earth. Continents shifted, rivers changed course, and ecosystems adapted or perished. Several centuries from the cataclysm, the Earth is making a recovery. Pockets of civilization are forming, crawling out of hundreds of years of barbarism. The printing press and gunpowder have just been reinvented. In this strange new world, heroes of epic proportion are needed to tame the wild frontiers and challenge the unknown. Such heroes have arisen from the new species of the planet, strangely altered humans, and intelligent mutated animals and plants. Indeed, humankind is no longer alone on the earth. Intelligence is a common attribute among these new species. There is much work to be done in this devastated world. Not all the species of Earth want to see a rebirth of a peaceful, cooperative civilization. The Cairns and Hoops and Serfs are all striving to conquer or remake the Earth in their own image. And, as if that weren't bad enough, leftover technology of the ancients still walks the land. Robots and death machines pose as great a threat as any new animal species. The heroes of this time struggle to find and master the artifacts of the pre-cataclysmic world. These mysterious devices of metal and plastic hold great power. They are the key to rebuilding civilization, or destroying it. So after the introduction chapter, the rulebook goes into how to make characters. I'm going to do a general overview of the process from the point of view of someone familiar with AD&D 2nd edition, so that we can get some idea what this game is about. The first thing we do when making a character is we choose a genotype. So this is Gamma World's version of character race or species. The player gets 4 options. They are pure strain humans, who are humans that have high ability scores and resistance to radiation and other hazards, but don't have any mutations. Altered humans, who don't get any of the bonuses of the pure strain humans, but have mutations. Mutated animals, who are intelligent anthropomorphic animals who gain some abilities from their animal ancestry and also have mutations. And the last genotype is sentient plant. Sentient plants have some of the characteristics of whatever kind of plants they're descended from and, you guessed it, have mutations. So after we choose our genotype and take note of any abilities we get from it, we move on to rolling our attributes or ability scores. These are rolled in order according to the table on page 15. If we look at the ability scores, they roughly correspond to what we have in D&D. Instead of wisdom, we have mental strength, which represents a character's mental fortitude and willpower. It often comes into play when defending against mental mutations. Down here we have senses, which is its own ability score in this game, and is an abstraction of how good a character's senses are. So if we look at the die codes for each genotype, we see that a lot of them say 46 minus L. That just means 46 and drop the lowest, like we're familiar with from D&D. Over here, under mutated animal, these here are based on what kind of animal we choose for our base stock, and they're listed on pages 12 and 13. So, for example, if we chose to be a mutant bear, these would be 16, 7, and 13. Other animals have these listed in their descriptions. After we figure out our attributes, we roll to see how many mutations the character has. This is in addition to any mutations the character gets from their genotype. The table on page 17 is divided into mental and physical mutations. I'll cover how mutations work in a later video and just say for now that this is how you figure out how many mutations of each type a character gets. Like in Dungeons & Dragons, characters in Gamma World have character classes. There are 4 of them. They are the Enforcer, which is vaguely like this game's fighter class, the Esper, who focuses on mutant powers and is sort of like a psionicist, the Examiner, whose class focuses on using and understanding technology from before the war, and the Scout, who is like a rogue ranger type of character. Each class has skills that the player divides a pool of skill points into, and they can raise these skills as they gain levels. Characters in Gamma World, like most games, will have what are called derived attributes. I'm not going to dive too deep into this one, but there are a few of them that are noteworthy. If we look at the derived attribute table on page 23, we see a modifier table that looks a lot like the one used in various later versions of D&D. Another is the use of ascending armor class, like in 3rd edition and beyond. With those we get melee and ranged THAC, which are just the character's bonuses to hit that are added to the d20 roll when making an attack roll. The last thing I'm going to point out here is how starting hit points are figured, which is really different than what a D&D player might be used to. Instead of rolling based on class, we roll d6 per point of constitution the character has and add them all together. So for example, a character with a 12 constitution would roll 12d6 to see how many hit points they have at first level. Needless to say, Gamma World characters start with a ton of hit points. However, keep in mind that there isn't any magical healing, and things in this world can do a ton of damage. There also isn't any concept of encounter balance. At this point, we'd almost be done building a character. The last 2 things to choose are a Cryptic Alliance and to buy equipment. The Cryptic Alliance is optional, and a character can't belong to more than one at a time. These are basically factions that require the character to live up to certain obligations, and in exchange give the character access to something beneficial. A character can also join a Cryptic Alliance later on in game if they choose. Starting equipment is bought using a currency called a domar, which probably are because the game is set in the remnants of the United States and in North America. Equipment looks a lot like what we see in D&D, with the possible exception of the flintlock weapons that are common in Tech Level 3 areas. Moving forward, I plan on doing videos explaining how different aspects of this game work in way more detail, but for now, at least we have a vague idea of what Gamma World is and how it works. Thanks for watching. The mutant animal known as Gorilla Cat and I would like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day.